Is it wrong that I really like this guy? Is it wrong that I am in his, like, you know, if I am in his dugout, I am in his bleachers, I am cheering for him, because I see no problem with this morally. I actually think that it's the morally right thing to do.
Thank you for clarifying the morally side of things, because legally it is fraud. So that's a clear and good distinction to make.
Gentlemen, this is Democracy Manifest.
Cameron, can you please speak for me?
Just for you, I will speak.
Thank you. Thank you.
Eamon, may you speak for me?
No. Sorry.
That's rude.
Yeah, I know. I know you expected it to be kind of give, take, push, pull, but I don't work like that.
You're a selfish man.
I'm just selfish. Yep. No.
And because you're so selfish, I'll start by asking you how your day was.
My day was good. Jumping in for a few weeks to work with a new crew of people working on tiny homes. So today was day one with this new crew, which I'll be dipping into, doing a bit of tiny home work. So it was interesting. Interesting, just all the considerations that have to go into it. One such example, so just for context to listeners, my day job is carpentry. And so we don't usually consider the weight of houses as we build them. But of course, when you're building a tiny home and it's on a trailer and it has to be towed around, there are limitations of how much weight you can put in them. So, you know, tiles in bathrooms, gyprock on walls are often not the go because it adds too much weight, therefore meaning you can't legally tow the thing anywhere.
So it's all cheap, is what you're telling me. Cheap materials.
Not really. I mean, it's actually...
Cheap builder.
Yes. If I'm doing it, yes. Cheap, nasty, won't even make it out of the driveway. Maybe other people you get more luck with. But no, it just calls for a bit of different, bit of lateral thinking.
Could you live in a tiny home?
You know what? I was standing in a big one today, just for, so it was...
A big tiny home.
Well, yeah, there's a bigger end of it, I think. It's valued about $120,000. It's 8 or 10 meters long, thereabouts. And it's spacious, but I have a lot of things. And also, like, even just all of my tools for the aforementioned job. So I don't know where I would put all that stuff, but I think if you had a good storage shed and then maybe a tiny home, you could make it work. Though I could see it getting cramped long term. I don't know. I'm not opposed to it at all. I think it's actually quite an economical way to get yourself a house in this stupid world.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I don't know whether in an ideal world that tiny homes would exist. I think it's more born out of, well, someone thought they could make a profit out of it because they had this good idea, but it's also born a bit out of necessity because people just want to get into the market. They might not want necessarily units or villas, so they'll go for a tiny home, which they are, despite us saying that they are, I guess, lighter materials, but internally, like, they're quite modern. They look quite slick a lot of the time. So they're, I don't know, they're, I guess, a decent option if that was the way that you had to go down, as long as it wasn't built by Eamon.
Yeah, just as long as it's not built by me. But yeah, the builder that I'm working for on this, he is an architect as well. So the design is, you know, it's definitely all about the design. So don't be fooled. They're not cheap looking. They're not cheap generally. They're just smaller. But it's so representative of 2024 and earlier when these first came onto the scene, because it's like, you have a housing crisis. What if you lived in somewhere really small, but we just made it really cool and like Instagrammable? And then that's where the tiny home movement was born. And it's like, well, maybe people just want a house like their parents could get and all that. But yeah.
One way that you can make a lot of money is, well, we can easily transition into either one of our stories this evening because they're both relating to someone making a lot of money. One of them is definitely fraud, and the other one is, let's just say, bordering on scalping, if we want to go that far. But
I'd call them both fraud.
They're both fraud. Well, one of them definitely is. Let's start with that one because a man in America, he has been charged with fraud. He I say earned in quotation marks, $10 million streaming AI music across all of, Spotify, Amazon, Apple, and YouTube. So we hit all the big streaming services. So this guy, his name's Michael Smith. He's 52 years old. And who allegedly used artificial intelligence to create hundreds of thousands of songs and then continuously stream them using bot accounts to generate unlawful royalty payments totaling more than $10 million. So this Michael Smith guy, he's 52 years old. He was a magician. Have you seen that clip? I can't remember who the artist is. But
yes.
And it's like, says something about it being a musician, and she's like, no.
What do you know?
That you're a musician.
So I'm a musician. Mm-hmm. What the fuck that mean? Make magic or something? What is musician?
I think you're confusing that.
Yeah, I'm not no musician. I make music.
Just really quick, I think you're confusing.
I'm not confusing nothing because you thought that all I was a magician or whatever the fuck you said.
See, that's what I think you think I said. No, I said musician, not magician.
I don't think, baby, I don't think. I know.
Bitch, I don't do magic.
Yeah. Means magician. And I just nearly stumbled on those two words. Anyway, yeah, he was a musician himself. His music career didn't work out. After that, he sort of offered to play instruments on other people's songs to make some money. And then obviously that didn't work out. So he turned to AI generated music and making bots to sort of stream his music to earn these royalty payments.
Now, Cam, let me ask you, and listeners would know that we are fierce advocates for musicians being paid fairly for their work, and we don't believe that the current streaming model comes really even remotely close to doing that. So with that in mind, is it wrong that I really like this guy? Is it wrong that I am in his, if I am in his dugout, I am in his bleachers, I am cheering for him? Because we'll get to it, but how this has been framed by some of the prosecution in the States is that it's stealing money from artists. It would be paid to artists. And I just think that is complete bullshit because it's not. It's just stealing money they would have kept for profits. The artists are still getting paid for their plays. It's not like was diverting real human being listeners away from the company. Diverting real human being listeners away from other artists. It was creating fake listeners to listen to fake songs just to game the system and eat into some of Spotify's profits. I see no problem with this. Morally, I actually think that it's the morally right thing to do. I do. Yeah, that's my statement.
Thank you for clarifying the morally side of things, because legally it is fraud. So that's a clear and good distinction to make on that. So yeah, he was arrested and charged with 3 crimes. Law enforcement officials called the case a first of its kind involving artificially inflated music streaming, which I guess it's the first case on this scale. But surely it's not the first time someone has used fake accounts or something like that to try and boost the numbers, because as you said, Eamon, the payments, they're pretty rubbish on all these streaming services, and we see similar things with, I guess, YouTube. But yeah, this is quite interesting. So this started in 2017, which firstly, I'm just impressed that he was using AI type stuff in 2017.
True. Yeah, true. I didn't I don't even know if it was on any of our radars in 2017, to be honest.
Yeah, it feels like the AI stuff only really came about in the last couple of years, but properly, like to make our AI generated music back in 2017, like it wasn't even that good 2 years ago, let alone quality of it in 2017. But I guess it didn't really matter because they were fake streams anyway. They were fake music, fake streams, fake accounts, all generating money.
Yeah, and I wonder if the reason Homebrewed homie Michael Smith, 52 years old.
Before we align ourselves too closely to him, I stress it is fraud. He has been criminally charged, facing at minimum, I think, of 20 years in prison. So let's not say that he's a friend of Homebrewed. We're keeping a distance a little bit.
Yeah, I'm unilaterally making that decision on our behalf. Look, I don't support fraud broadly, okay, but I think there are instances where it's morally justified. But anyway, that aside, I think the reason that Michael Smith probably got done was his greed, or maybe not his greed, just it was too successful, because his bot accounts could generate approximately 661,440 streams per day, which equates to daily royalties of $3,300. So anyone else thinking of doing the same thing, you might want to just operate at a lower level of streaming than some of the biggest artists in the world, because that's going to pop up on the radars of those internal at Spotify and go, well, who is this artist that nobody has ever heard of making probably garbage AI generated music and somehow making as much money as Charlie XCX is in a day?
Over 500,000 daily streams. And yeah, those annual royalties were about $1.2 million based on those number of streams that he could get. He had two unnamed co-conspirators working with him as well. And in an email, Smith apparently said to them, we need to get a ton of songs fast to make this work around the anti-fraud policies. He said that he wanted to get out a lot of songs quickly so that it wouldn't call attention to his maneuvers by streaming the same song too many times. So those 661,000 streams were spread out across hundreds, if not thousands, or hundreds of thousands of songs per day. So it wasn't just the one song getting multiple streams, and it was a pretty, he thought this out, because he thought of the ways he could get around this anti-fraud maneuvers. And this, as I said, 2017 was when he started. So he went 7 years. It was only last week that he got charged. And up until then, he was still doing it and frauduling himself $10 million US.
Yeah, pull-up stumps in 2020, mate. Everybody was looking elsewhere. That was the best opportunity to maybe fly under the radar with that one. But I also love the emails that you referenced there, Cam, which so many people who commit bad crimes seem to do, is leave a chain of emails detailing those crimes.
Or even worse, they literally film themselves on the smartphone just doing the crime and then upload it to social media. The police are like, thank you very much. You've made our job so easy.
Genuinely, yeah. So, God, I don't know. I know what that was all about. You know, I am a fan of Michael Smith, but I think he could have done things a whole lot better there. But I do want to get to that point, because I referenced it earlier. This is what the US Attorney Damian Williams said in a statement after the arrest. Quote, Smith stole millions in royalties that should have been paid to musicians, songwriters, and other rights holders whose songs were legitimately streamed. Like, are they on the same team as Spotify here? Like, are they trying to pull the wool over everybody's eyes? It's not how this has happened at all. And I don't know why the attorney and the prosecutor's trying, I suppose, to make the crime less likable and repeatable. But that's not what occurred at all. It didn't take money from anybody else. The money still got paid to everyone else who got streamed. He just took some money from Spotify.
Wait, Spotify aren't the good guys?
Hang on. Let me just check my notes. No, they're not. They're not. I just think it's weird that that's the take coming from the prosecutor. That's what Spotify would say. You know, that would be their PR response to something like that. But why the attorney says that, I don't know.
Yeah, because I imagine, and I don't know the details, but if there were hundreds of thousands of songs and he was doing, 661,000 streams per day, each song probably wouldn't have had much more than, 10,000 streams, presumably. He just had a lot of songs across a lot of different artists to try and not flag that he was doing this fraudulent activity. But as you mentioned, because the streams are so low, they weren't being playlisted and then taking that spot from an actual artist and musician. Like, these were bots who were streaming AI generated music. Like, yes, he's earned income in a fraudulent way, but he hasn't taken that revenue from illegitimate artists trying to make their way on Spotify, because it's the streams weren't actual people streaming their music, or if they were very, very It certainly wasn't the bulk of the $10 million that he earned were from actual people streaming. They were from the bots that he created. But continuing on from the US Attorney Damien Williams, he said, it's time for Smith to face the music, which I just have to applaud that pun. I just think, whatever you think about the rest of the statement, that line alone is chef's kiss.
I'm sure he had fun doing that too.
Oh, he would. Yeah. When he came up with it, he got, hey, check this out.
Yeah, I can't wait to say this in front of people. But yeah, it's an interesting story. It's like, I don't know what's going to happen to Michael Smith. Maybe this is one we can try and check back in on down the track when maybe there's been a trial and a punishment issued. But it is interesting to see how these things are happening. You know, what I would like to see is artists just getting a small amount of bots to fraudulently stream their music. So it's just inflating their numbers. You know, they were going to get 100,000, they get 150. And then if enough artists did that, they'd all probably actually get paid what they deserve from Spotify.
Well, how about instead of doing illegal stuff, we can just get Spotify to pay the artist properly?
Or that too. But I mean, we've tried that. I think a lot of legislators have tried that and they've gone, no, we can't possibly. But anyway, we can move from that fraud to another form of fraud, though this one, and I mean, this is a genuine, like, come on, like, this is exactly why laws don't reflect morality in these two stories. They juxtapose one another and they complement one another perfectly. But we're going to transition now to the second story of tonight's, or today's, depending on when you're listening, music news. That is Green Day. They're coming to Australia. They're selling tickets via Ticketmaster, which is owned by Live Nation. And that has been, well, it was revealed when people went to purchase these tickets earlier in the week that the Green Day Australian tour is using what's called dynamic pricing when tickets are on sale, and particularly when ticket sales are in high demand.
Okay, so the screenshot that was taken in regards to this pricing was from the pre-sale. So guess what? The tickets are going to be in demand for any pre-sale ticket. People are going to jump on and be like, hey, this is an exclusive pre-sale ticket before the rest of the country get to jump on and access these tickets. I get an exclusive early. I'm going to jump on these tickets. Of course, those are going to have high demand regardless of what's going on. But yeah, so these dynamic pricing tickets, just for reference, so the screenshot that we're basing this off shows 2 in-demand tickets - artist pre-sale, $474.70 per ticket, which after handling charges added on for the 2 tickets is a total of $956.55. There are also reports of what they described as average seat tickets selling for $500+ due to them being in demand.
Now, even if you're on the money that Michael Smith was, that is insane. That's like a third of his daily earnings just to buy this ticket.
That's so many more bot streams just to justify going to a Green Day gig.
That's 200,000 bot streams get you those $956 tickets. But this is just insane. I think it's insane. So Cam brought this story to my attention today, and I am still in a state of absolute shock about this. So basically, if you imagine how Uber surge pricing works, and I think everybody's been in that situation where they've been out a little bit too late, and you are not alone in wanting to get home at that time, say it's a Saturday night, and you pull up the Uber app on your phone, and what would normally be a $30 journey home is now $110 because of the demand. That is exactly what's going on here, but in a ticketing context. So when there's a really hot ticket event, such as a Green Day gig that goes on sale, if you are one of thousands trying to get tickets at one time, Ticketmaster have just decided that's good enough reason for them to double the price, triple the price of the tickets based on some algorithm that they haven't really explained.
Yeah, and I understand the whole supply and demand argument around this, and you use the Uber surge pricing example, but the reason that Uber give at least that the prices are so much higher during those peak times is because they want to try and encourage more Uber drivers to actually be driving to complete these deliveries. But these tickets, there's only one seller for the tickets. They're not going anywhere. Like, you're not like, oh, hang on, there's suddenly so many more people wanting these tickets. You have a capacity. You're limited to what you can sell. You know that there's going to be demand for these tickets, and prices for the longest time have been a set amount, and you know that going in. There were reports of people sitting in queues for a long time, getting through to actually getting a ticket, and then going, oh, hell no, I'm not paying $500 for a ticket just because it's in demand. Like, I just think the whole concept's a bit ridiculous. And going through some of the comments regarding the dynamic pricing model that I was reading, this was on a Reddit thread, which I know Reddit isn't necessarily always the best of humans and society, depending on where you are on Reddit.
But on this subreddit you're in.
Yeah, but on this particular subreddit, users were commenting things saying, I'm refusing to report any artists that have shows using the dynamic pricing model. I tried to get tickets to Green Day yesterday, waited in line, and then logged off when I saw the pricing. Going to a show is already a huge expense without Ticketmaster piling on with ludicrous pricing. They can get stuffed is the PG version of what they said. Someone else said WTF is the point of Australian states having anti-scalping laws. Also, the audacity of them calling it in demand. It's not like Uber surge pricing where they can at least claim it's to get more drivers to accept. Ticketmaster is the only seller. I'm complaining, but realize we've totally accepted this as normal for airline tickets as well. And someone else said anti-scalping measures that cuts out the middleman so Ticketmaster can just scalp the consumer directly. Very cool.
And that's what I'm getting at. How is it that we view, I mean, in the eyes of the law, what Michael Smith did will probably see him go to jail for some time. But Ticketmaster can just so outwardly just basically say, we're just going to take more of your money because we can. Like, there is no rationale behind this apart from some weird supply and demand argument. That's why there's limited tickets. We don't need higher prices to satisfy supply and demand issues. There's a limited amount of tickets. If you miss out, you miss out. That's just how it works. It's great if a show sells out. But Michael Smith cheats the Spotify system fraudulently, admittedly, and we'll see jail time. Ticketmaster just decide to gouge more money out of people who are struggling as it is, and an industry as well, who broadly, this affects the industry. More people aren't going to go to shows because of this. They just decide arbitrarily to implement a measure, which means people just pay more because for no good reason. And legally, it's absolutely fine. And it says as much in this article that I've read about it, that the regulator says it's totally legal if consumers are not misled, which they're not misled. But it's just, I think, given when this is happening, the state of people's finances at the moment, it just feels like so rogue and so insulting to do to people, and just like a kick in the guts. It's at least when Coles and Woolies price gouge, you know, like they kind of hide it, and it's just like incrementally across 7,000 items in store. It's not one ticket they're just tripling the price of because they can.
Well, how's bloody Tim Tams are $6 now? That feels fraudulent right there. Packet of Tim Tams, $6.
Fraudulent.
I saw I'll up a chocolate, clearly. Caramel koalas, which were, you can use like these, you know, Chrome extension for price trackers and stuff. At their peak, they were $1 and then on special for 80 cents. Now they're $2 and on special for $1, which used to be the full price, but now they can advertise it as half price.
It's probably 30 grams smaller as well than the $1 one used to be as well.
Yeah, shrinkflation, as they call that. But
it is shrinkflation.
Yeah, it just feels, as you said, wrong. And I guess there's a few things that can happen here. There can be, the government can step in and actually do something about it, because there's no way that Ticketmaster alone are going to go, actually, yeah, no. I see we're doing the wrong thing. We're going to try and do right and not do dynamic pricing, because there's just no chance that any for-profit company will try and make less of a profit. So we either need the government to step in, or We just need anyone who's using these dynamic pricings. We need the consumers to boycott and just say, I'm sorry, I would love to go to the Green Day gig, but I'm not buying a ticket with dynamic pricing. I saw a lot of people making similar comments along those lines as well. So harder, I think, if, you're a Green Day diehard and, I'm not saying that they're on their last leg, but they wouldn't have as many Australian tours in them as they did 10, 20 years ago. So it could be a harder decision not to go and see them. But at the same time, if you're having to fork out $500 on a ticket, it almost makes that decision for you for a lot of people because you just can't afford it.
Totally. And it just is so unnecessary. The old system worked completely fine. There were no issues with the old system. And if I were a hardcore Green Day fan, I mean, I had that, what was that album with Boulevard of Broken Dreams on it?
American Idiot.
I had that album. I loved that when I was a kid, but I wouldn't classify myself as a current day hardcore Green Day fan. But if I was, I would be deeply saddened that the band has agreed to this. And Ticketmaster have, kind of since responded to some of this and saying that the artists set the prices. But so whether they were like, oh, let's use dynamic pricing on our show, we don't know yet, at least. But either way, a band of Green Day stature who would have made as much money as they have already, who would be making enough money off this tour, do not need to implement something like that. And the show doesn't go without them. So don't tell me they don't have the ability to stand up and go, actually, no, we're not going to let our fans be scalped by a multinational where we're not playing the show if they're going to use this ticketing regime, or we're going to use a different person for the ticket, a different company for the ticket distribution and sales. I think it's just very depressing. I think these are the things, right? They say, when like entire societies fall or revolutions happen, they say it's just like one little thing that is kind of innocuous that tips people over the edge. And I feel like this could be one of those things. Now, I'm not saying it's going to lead to the end of whatever this capitalist system is as we know it, but it feels like one of those things that could just piss people off enough, just enough that they just go and destroy everything.
Yeah, I think part of the problem too, though, is that it's not just this one instance, right? Because we mentioned the supermarkets, we've obviously mentioned the price and cost of living and just the prices that people are having to fork out. Then you've got all the music industry issues as well. So if more people adopt this system and more people do boycott, then that's going to have completely different effects on the way that we're looking at gigs and festivals and all the rest. So it could be the straw that breaks the camel's back, if you want to use that analogy. I think it could potentially be, and I think hopefully it does without hurting the industry too much, but hopefully this is sort of a bit of a wake-up call for people to go, oh, hang on, no, we can't change the pricing model to be dynamic and, charge our fans a ludicrous amount of money to come and see us. On that note, go to patreon.com/homebrewed and you can donate thousands of dollars to us for ludicrous amounts of money. No, we don't have that yet, but we maybe,
it's cool
maybe
when we do it though. No,
it's fun when we get the money, and maybe we were the two co-conspirators for Michael Smith, and that's why. No, we're not. I need to make that clear. But anyway, I've completely gone off the rails with what I was talking about. But
I do have a pivot for us though out of this story. Unless we have any more to say, it's fraud, just legal fraud, and Ticketmasters suck. But I do have a pivot to a positive story, Cam. Unless you had any further cents to add to that, Wallace.
Oh, the problem is I spent all my cents to get a Green Day ticket, so I've got none. No, I think we've pretty much said everything that we want to say. So yeah, please pivot away. Do a Maxi Ballard and pivot that midfield into a forward direction instead of turning backwards.
Verticality.
Yeah. Hey.
But no, I will pivot now into a much more positive story, and that is that the Contemporary Music Festival Viability Fund has been announced as part of a project or funding from Sound New South Wales. Now, if you caught our podcast with Rick Bridgman on Monday, you would have heard that he has spoken a lot about and been very supportive of what the New South Wales government has done in relation to music and live music in the state. Sound New South Wales being one of the bodies. We've spoken about them a bit here on the show in various music newses. But Sound New South Wales, the state government body responsible for kind of looking after, checking in on, supporting the music industry. They have just today, and I've just seen this recently, which is why I'm bringing it in randomly at the end here. They've brought in the Contemporary Music Festival Viability Fund. They're saying if you run a large-scale music festival within New South Wales that is currently experiencing financial challenges, Sound New South Wales is offering grants of up to $500,000 to contribute to government-related and operational costs. The aim of the fund is to help improve short-term viability for festival operators, reduce burden and risk, and boost confidence across audiences and the live music industry at large.
That's awesome. Is that $500,000 total or per festival who apply?
Per festival. So the grants are up to $500,000 from Sound New South Wales. Now, I believe this was announced mere hours ago, which is why we're just kind of seeing this mid-record. We had what we wanted to talk about planned, and this has just popped up on my feed. So I thought we'd talk about that. That is really, really positive, particularly when we've seen so many festivals pull up stumps and call it quits, at least temporarily over the last couple of years. And again, as we were talking about with Rick, it is showing what having a supportive government can do for an industry.
Do we have Peter Noble to thank for any of this? Has him pulling Bluesfest off? You know, we hypothesised that it could be not a bluff, but a, you know, I am going to pull this down, but hey, government, if there's room for you to step in and help, then maybe we can continue the festival and continue to make millions for the New South Wales and Australian economy. And a few weeks later, the government have come out with this $500,000, up to $500,000 grant. And you mentioned it's to do with government costs and operational costs. So that would include things like policing, I'd imagine, and artist bookings. Would that go under operational?
I'd say so. I mean, you could put anything under operational costs. I'm sure, like, you know, flying people places that don't need to be flown wouldn't be included, but whatever the costs are of running it. But yeah, it's a 2-year contemporary music festival viability fund, and it was established for the exact purposes that we have seen. It's a good amount of money. It's going to kick off this month ahead of the summer festival season, and it's going to run until June 30, 2026. There's also going to be amendments to the Music Festivals Act to help revive the struggling industry. This is going to give festival operators more power to control spiraling costs, which is really, really good. So we'll have a lot to chat about on that, I'm sure, in the coming weeks and months. But it is good to end this on a positive story. We started with fraud. We ended with grants.
And yeah, somehow it's the government who have come out in positive light and a human who have come out with fraud. Normally it's the other way. We're praising humans and having a go at government for not doing enough, and now we've flipped it around. We're groundbreaking stuff here in Homebrewed.
I'm still praising Michael, and I will note that he has the same last name as you, Cam, so I don't know if there's any relation there.
Just saying, there were two unnamed co-conspirators. That's all I'm saying. But no, that does feel like a good place to end. I did also say, I say it's a good place to end as I go to say another story that Miley Cyrus is apparently being sued for copying a Bruno Mars song with Miley's song Flowers. I haven't looked into the details of that, but that's also something that popped up about 20 odd minutes ago as we're recording this. So, there's plenty of breaking news that we're not going too much detail into for obvious reasons, but yeah, that'll be interesting to see how that unfolds. Maybe we can update you on that in a couple of weeks' time as well.
Well, totally. And if you want a bit of kind of history on how those copyright cases function, how they often end, look to our music news from earlier this year where we spoke about Ed Sheeran being sued by, I cannot remember the name, a descendant of a famous American artist for a very particular...
Was it Marvin Gaye?
It was.
Oh, it was someone
who... a descendant...
wrote for Marvin Gaye, or... there was some, like, a layer of separation, I think.
Yeah, I think that's it. There's definitely Marvin Gaye was in the mix, but we covered the Ed Sheeran case and the implications and what that actually means a bit earlier in the year. So if you are interested in that kind of stuff, you can head back to our previous episodes. And similarly, that chat with Rick Bridgman that I referenced earlier, it's a really good conversation, went up only on Monday, still available for your ears and will be for all of eternity. So, if you can't listen to it this decade, there's always next decade, but, we'd appreciate it if you listen to it sooner.
And patreon.com/homebrewed if you want to donate $500,000.
Thank you. This episode of Homebrewed was produced by Rugby League immortal, amazing golfer, and good friend of mine, Cameron Smith. If you want to catch up with anything else we're doing on Homebrewed, you can catch it at www.homebrewed.au, and we will see you next time.